Yeah, you read the title right. I am blaming you. And me, and pretty much everybody.
Extreme TTRPG News. 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 Yeah, Extreme TTRPG News. Extreme TTRPG News. And the world's most awesome TTRPG. These little masters are learning how to believe. When the wizards of the ghost attack, these TTRPG boys have got up to attack. Extreme! Extreme! News that is extreme! TTRPG power!
Hey folks, it's your old pal, King Waspinator, and welcome back to Total Party Skills. I made a post, I believe yesterday, talking about how the trends in the player base... Thanks, neighbors, for trying to run your bandsaw right now. Anyway, it was a post saying... Oh, you fucking cocksuckers. Sure, it's Sunday afternoon. Why not sit around sawing things a week before Halloween? Alright, so anyway, what was I saying? Oh, yeah. Gary Gygax's famous quote about how, the secret of role-playing games is if you understand the rules, you don't really need the books, is, teensy bit true. It's kind of true. There's still a lot of valid, actually honestly valid reasons to have books, some of which is that a lot of people don't really get, in quotation marks, what the rules are. They might know what the rules are and know how they work, but do they really understand the whys? Well, that varies from person to person. Plus, it is handy to have a common reference point, especially to quell arguments over particular little quibbling subject matters of interpretations of various rules, dynamics, and all that kind of stuff. Or for common touchstones in terms of settings and character types, and so that the players coming in have some way of understanding what it is that's expected of them and what they're playing. So it's sort of, like a prompt more so than a script that allows them to be able to navigate the world and, understand how they're supposed to act in character. But to me, I think the real secret that most, game designers and authors in the hobby don't really getting out there, especially in the internet age and the way social hierarchies work, is that, the real trends that define what the hobby is are out of the hands of game designers. Whether you're at the top of the pyramid, people like Mike Merle's types, to your bitter rejects like Grim Jim and RPG Pundit, or down to low-life pond scum like me. What the people who buy these books and do with them once they're past the point of purchase is entirely out of our hands. We can be honored or ignored as much as they want. Author's intent is completely meaningless. And so the real hobby itself, unlike pretty much any other genre of entertainment, is entirely in the hands of the people enjoying the art. It's not prefabricated in any way. Even a tabletop war game is more rigidly under the control of the people who've designed it than any role-playing game could be. And frankly, somewhat anecdotally, but this things I've been observing for years, and obviously through the filter of how the internet deigns to decide to show us things. But there seems to be two broad trend lines amongst the people actually running these games and playing these games that are both not supportive of creative expression, which is part of what these games are supposedly supposed to be about, right? On one side, you have various social pressures that are causing people to second guess every little thing they're doing and having to fill out paperwork and crap like they're running a human resources department and not putting on a show for some friends that their friends get to participate in. And on the other side, you have a bunch of people who are getting incredibly rigid and traditionalistic and apparently just wanting to chase recreating this perfect memory they have of their childhood using the old D&D box sets, which is a sort of thing that you can never actually accomplish. That's a dragon you'll never catch, which is why there's so many variations of the OSR and so many variations of classic original old school D&D rules out there, because you can never actually really nail that down, because you're chasing a memory, and memories are hallucinations in a way, even if they were based on true events. And neither of these is good for people being able to just freely express themselves. You know, being run out of town on a rail, being tarred and feathered because you want to play a tiefling or a tabaxi is, like, that's not good. Maybe you have a good idea for a character in a wheelchair, and like, you're just going to be automatically rejected because this doesn't fit some, like, old formatting that everyone has an expectation of what these things are supposed to look like, even when, I don't know how to tell you this, there's more games out there besides Dungeons and fucking Dragons. But unfortunately, the people who are not putting themselves in that sort of binding are tripwiring themselves, putting up like little minefields of things they got to be careful about stepping on, because, oh my god, what if somebody watching my live stream heard me say something that they take to be as vaguely supportive of colonialism? It's like, well, maybe don't stream your fucking games and participate in turning what's supposed to be a personal hobby into a passive entertainment hobby, where people can just be into D&D because they watch people play it, but they themselves don't actually run a game or play a game. Having to constantly double check to make sure that your spider NPC or villain is going to be okay with everyone is quashing creativity. Both of these trends are quashing creativity. And these trends are being generated by the users, not the people at the top. To a degree, some of this stuff is being embraced by people at the top of these various little bubbles within the industry, but they're not the ones making it. They're not, Renegade Studios didn't just up and come up on their own with this idea that they need to, like, tell people that Nazis aren't allowed to play Hunter the Reckoning, They picked up that need to have to put that kind of disclaimer in their work from something else, from a social pressure. And all this gatekeeping talk of, like, oh, gatekeeping's good, we gotta gatekeep. You can't gatekeep a fucking hobby, man. Quit living inside the fantasy world that you're playing in. You want to know the real dark secret hot take? There's memes where, like, the guys all have all the swords pointed at them, and the meme will be like, hey, what hot take gets everyone around you to be like this? Well, I got one for you. Why is it, with such regularity, you come across people in this hobby who've been playing role-playing games since they were kids, who seem a little, shall we say, emotionally retrograde? Obviously, other entertainment hobbies seem to have this effect on people. To a certain degree, I believe this is the result of intentional marketing that, was begun at least during the 80s, maybe in the late 70s, maybe more so in the 90s. But during that little window there, when so much of our children's programming was telling us all as kids that growing up is bad and you shouldn't listen to adults, under the auspice of they want to show kids and cartoons with agency so kids can feel like they have agency, because, like, whatever, that seemed to have this impact on, the whole generation of people who, they hit 18 and instead of throwing out all their toys, they still kept buying toys, but now they're collector's items. They still keep playing games and other things that previous generations, when they got to a certain age, they're like, fuck that, I gotta go to work, and they let it go. And I know people have various defenses for this, and I'm not saying that it's 100% bad. Certainly, I myself have participated in this to a great degree. You should see my office. I know, it's hardly Asmon Golds, but, I do what I can. But regardless, this is an aspect of our hobby, of people who've been involved in it a long time. And for some reason, this leads to a lot of weirdly medieval thinking. Like, maybe you spent too much time thinking about this stuff, where you start to take some of these fantasy concepts a bit too close to heart in terms of your own personal fucking philosophy. The role-playing game hobby is not a castle or a city. It has no walls. It has no single point of entry. You cannot gatekeep it. That is impossible. You can be assholes to people. Congratulations. That's not hard. You know, even the most basic of primate can scoop its own shit up in its hands and toss it at somebody. You haven't actually proven anything about how fucking intelligent you are. And also, gatekeeping, in terms of an entertainment hobby, about creative expression, limits creative expression. So am I taking a both sidesism? You could look at it that way. I'd say this is more of an all of the above kind of issue. Obviously, there are some exceptions out here in the world. Hopefully, some of those exceptions might be people in my own audience. So if you don't feel like anything I'm saying actually applies to you, then guess what? It doesn't. Anyway, FedEx is here and it's making my dog whine. So I guess I'm going to go. Until next time, quit destroying the fucking hobby.
Extreme TTRPG news. It's the news for TTRPG. That's so fucking extreme. Get your extreme.
All right, are the people who would have been annoyed by that previous segment gone now? Okay, cool. So, the actual thing that I've seen so far that's actually really wrong and bad in this new edition of D&D that's being rolled out isn't the consent rules in and of themselves. They're insulting, but like they're doing plenty of other insulting things, and they've already been saying all this shit online and on internet sites and stuff. So like, is this really a surprise? No, that's not news. Changes to the character creation that kind of waters things down conceptually, that's also not really a surprise. Not only has it been the trend we've been on, but it's not even the first time this has happened if you remember all the player option stuff for AD&D back towards the very tail end of its run. Now, the thing I have heard about that's inside this new DMG in particular that could be one of the most flabbergastingly bad misreads of what's going on here and the dynamic between players and dungeon masters is the concept of the players having a home base bastion location where their characters can go where they are immune from the dungeon master. What? Like, the dungeon master is not supposed to be the antagonist to the players. The dungeon master does have to control the antagonists, but the dungeon master also controls all the good people that the characters supposedly get to interact with, right? Now, albeit this is like on that spectrum of stuff where, yes, there have been examples of dipshits in the past acting in this way. I've certainly been personally witness to it, where the players and the dungeon masters do get a little too rivalrous, in large part because they're just trying to constantly outsmart each other and do things to annoy one another, which, you know, like, maybe if you find yourself in that situation, maybe you need to unwind the game and make some adjustments to your gaming group's composition and stuff. You know, I know that might mean you might have to hurt someone's feelings, but too fucking bad. But the idea that the players get to have a place where they can take their characters where they're immune from the dungeon master. Why even have the dungeon master anymore? I guess we can just all switch over to these like modern day Catalyst style games where everyone just gets to take turn narrating shit. There's no central vision. Might as well just play war games. Might as well just play an MMORPG where, you know, like all the rules and everything's already pre-built in and structured by people who aren't actually playing it in the moment. And you just get your prescribed reactions that you're allowed to make to various things, and that's it. Because that's what a dungeon masterless game is. The rules end up having to be a bit more rigid, and actions have to be a bit more structurally defined in order for that to be able to work without it devolving into just a bunch of stupid arguing. And then what's to prevent that dungeon master versus player dynamic to just start cropping up amongst the entire player group? I mean, this is in part kind of one of the things that kind of undid Wraith the Oblivion and made it unplayable, is because it had this aspect of the game through people playing other characters' shadows that like created an intense amount of antagonism between the entire player group. You know, at least focusing that towards the dungeon masters at least keeps the players somewhat in sync with each other, which is better than nothing. But the thinking in this, I mean, beyond just like, I guess, this pushing in the video gamification trend of role-playing games, of trying to hand more power to the players, but like, the people who make role-playing games don't actually manifest the role-playing games. Myself, I don't run any of the games I write. If any of them ever come to life, it's because other people far, far away from me who can do whatever the fuck they want with them, right? Same thing with Dungeons and Dragons. It's up to the actual consumers to make this form of entertainment come to life. War games have miniatures, books have, an actual book to read, comics have an actual physical product. Even a movie or a TV show has a physical product of a sort, even if that product is transmitted visually and you might not actually really own the real film that it's contained upon, or it just could be a copy on, magnetic strips inside of a fucking DVD case or whatever the hell it is. There's still something actually tangibly there that you don't just get to like poke at and mold however you want as the viewer. You're just entirely passively consuming whatever it is. Role-playing games have always been the one primary exemption to this that exists within the same overall bubble of entertainment fiction, but yet is entirely detached from the writing process in the end. Even the rules that give these things structure, you can ignore them and embrace them as you see fit. Having a rule in the middle of that allows players to say, nya, 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 you can't catch me. I think not only is a misunderstanding of what the dynamic involved in these games is, which is quite telling that the flagship game of that hobby is even proposing such things. Like, who the fuck is writing this shit? And I don't think that really has any foresight as to what kind of ramifications such thinking will have, and how it will change how the hobby works and how the hobby feels, especially when other suck-ass mainstream companies who live downwind of D&D start adopting similar practices, when WotC isn't the one themselves stealing practices from other companies, as with the consent rules. But I guess that's about all I have to say about that. Until next time, life is like a box of chocolates.
TTRPG News.
TTRPG News.
Gary Gygax is alive.
Yeah.
They're making it up to steal again.
That's
These colonious bastards won't take this hobby from me.
Oh, and another thing before we go. Now, I know DriveThruRPG had put out their new policy update a while ago about how they don't tolerate users on their platform making negative advertising, trying to paint them in a bad light to try to gain some sort of, like, oh, they're woke and they're censoring me traffic to their own products. That's not what I'm doing here. I do have a general question, though. I noticed today that there was a little update notification on DriveThruRPG in the Publisher Tools section, saying that they're now going to have it set up so that people can filter out AI-generated content based on whether or not you, the user, have selected, is this handcrafted or is this AI-generated when you upload your product. I have a few questions / possible problems with this. To what degree of inclusion of AI tools does something become itself a AI-generated product? It's something that I spent tens to dozens of hours writing by hand on a computer made by a company that likes to jam AI tools into everything now. But, with everything turned off, to try to avoid, their auto-correcting and text-filling shit. But it's actually written by me entirely, even the super fucking repetitive stuff. But I have an AI-generated image on the cover, or maybe some AI-generated images throughout the book. do those AI-generated images then turn the entire product into an AI-generated product? Like, is the art in a role-playing game the product? Or is the text the product? And as long as the text is not AI-generated, should it matter at all whether or not the art has had AI involved? Or, because any AI was involved, to even the slightest, slimmest degree, the entire thing has to be blanketed with the AI label. 2, what the hell do you mean by handcrafted? As I alluded to, I mean, the computers we all use to write everything now, by hand, beyond just being a highly artificial type of machine that is not handcrafted in the least. It's not like for my new edition of my role-playing game, I hired a bunch of Benedictine monks to hand transcribe every last single copy of this book. And we got actual real bookbinders to sit there and sew them together. Like, what do you mean handcrafted? Like, none of this shit, like, none of this stuff is handcrafted. We use word processing programs to write. We use computer programs to do internal art layouts. Even back in the 70s, like photocopiers and mimeographs, like this is not handcrafted. I had to use my hands to put in prompts to get images on some of my books. Is that handcrafted? And as I said, since all of this stuff is technologically dependent, and the tech companies are now forcing AI tools into all of our devices, whether we want them there or not, at what point is anything not AI generated? You can't even research stuff online anymore without being entirely sure that AI has not been involved in the process of helping you find the information, let alone generate the information that you're researching and then use as a reference point for things you're writing. In other words, the line has already been blurred. And when the line's blurred, it's a bit hard to universalize a policy like that under such a framing. Now, like, at least on Amazon, when you upload a book and it asks you if you used AI in it, it gives you nuanced answers. You can say, no, I didn't use it for the text. Yes, I did use it for the art, but in limited amount or most of it. Or did I edit it at all, or did I not edit it? You know, it gives you, you can actually tell it a little bit so it can sort to what degree these things are being used. But from what I read on that little notification on TTRPG, having not actually encountered this in person, uploading something yet, I would hope maybe it gives you that kind of nuance, but it doesn't sound like that's designed for that. But, as far as I'm concerned, I believe that the text of a role-playing game is the actual product of the role-playing game, because that's what you need to read in order to be able to know how to run the game. Whereas the art is just set dressing, so the book looks a little prettier, and maybe you might use it as a visual reference if you're trying to imagine what a blue dragon looks like. Hint, it's a dragon that's blue. And so I am not going to be labeling my stuff as AI generated, even if I have included AI art. And I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Until next time. Is there anything else? No? All right, until next time, stay waspinated. Get the fuck out of here.
Extreme TTRPG news. It's the news that's extreme and about TTRPG.
Oh, fucking extreme!
Yeah.
In the year 1999, civilization as we know it will lay in ruins. Several years prior, in the past to the future, our future, the world stood in awe of itself and its achievements, with the release of the game RealityGate home entertainment console, a revolutionary, state-of-the-art virtual reality interface that promised to put you, the average consumer in the game. But for real this time. The United States Congress immediately called for hearings to get to the bottom of this strange new device. Kids and young adults across America in all 5 key demographics were enjoying themselves and having a great time, and our government wanted to know why. Was it communism? The scientists who developed the game Reality Gates software assured the esteemed members of Congress that their market shares would show incredible dividends during the next fiscal quarter. Confident that they would be able to skim a percentage of the profits for themselves with minimal public awareness, they gave the game Reality Gate their approval, and it was swiftly certified by the FDA. The game R-Gate, as it was to be called after marketing conducted research on what potential buyers would respond to best, the Freedom X Hyper console was a close runner-up, was sold to millions of average, tax-paying American households, and Canada. The console used a special form of circuitry which used lasers to create micro wormholes that physically connected the game R-Gates directly to Reality Gate Entertainment servers hidden deep in the wilds of Silicon Valley. Upon activating the console's gate, the players would be transported both physically and mentally into the game environment which they had purchased separately for only $59.99. The experience would only last a fraction of a second, and yet the players would have memories of hours upon hours of immersive online play. The technology worked. Everything seemed normal. At first. 2/3 of the North American population had tried out the game R-Gate by the end of its first year on the market. They did not yet realize that when the game R-Gate opened a portal in space and time to put you in the game, that you would come back, changed by the amazing graphics and processing speeds. The Game R-Gate home entertainment console had just gone on to the foreign market, and preliminary data showed an incredible sales potential in the making when the first cases of the N-Cell virus were documented. The N-Cell virus earned its name because it was a virus that went in your cells to infect you. It had somehow leaped from digital zombie NPCs in a first-person shooting game into the biological user population. It had a 12-month incubation period, and the initial symptoms seemed relatively minor. Some minor complaints about modern comic books or too many female action heroes to be able to buy into the verisimilitude. They seemed to really get agitated about verisimilitude for some reason. Not enough to raise the alarm early enough. By the time the first infected cases started to mutate into stage 2 trolls, the game R-Gate had been used by over 4 billion consumers worldwide. It was too late for them. Now, just a few years later, back in the future I first mentioned, the world is a wasteland. Small bands of survivors struggle to regain their freedom, while resistance fighters defend them from the mutant gangs of Silicon Valley's warlords. Most of the male population is gone, changed by the progressive mutations of the N-Cell virus. The people who avoided catching it, or were somehow naturally immune, are few and far between, and highly valued to the survivors, for they may be the key to saving the human race. But their dreams of a better future than this may soon die on the vine, as the turn of the millennium grows ever nearer. The warlords of Silicon Valley stand united under new leadership. Most powerful of the Khans, the Rogan Joe. He has vowed to crush the resistance once and for all, and to take them as vessels to forge a new generation of consumers. The most key demographic to ever live. His marketing strategies are flawless. His army of trolls, none finer. The resistance shall surely fall before him, and there is no one left in this dystopian post-Game R-Gate nightmare to come to their rescue. In order to save the future from the mistakes of their past, our future, we will have to look back to the past. our past. And their past too. Look, just don't worry about it. It's time travel. You know how it is. We will have to look back into the past, some 3,600 years to be exact. Counting from now, not then. There? Great, now I'm getting confused. Amazons! That's what I'm trying to get to. The Amazons. Plucked from the shores of Atlantis on the eve of its annihilation, then sent hurtling to the year 1999 to save the human race.